And we're live. Hey everybody, David G here with the Internet Marketing Party, and I've got our very special guest, our speaker for the month of August, and he's generated over $1 billion with multiple companies in revenue. And you started your own company from nothing, so you had one of those rags to riches story. The guy that flies under the radar. Most people have never heard of him, even though he makes probably 10 times more money than most of the big name gurus out there. And he probably you probably saw him scrunch up a little bit to hear me say that, because he just doesn't roll like that. Anyway, I'd like to introduce you to Paul Moss of Moss Affiliate Marketing. How are you, Paul?
Doing great, doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So, Paul, the way that I heard the story about how you succeeded online was to create a network and leverage that network of smart, talented people that were go-getters. Give them a piece of the action, take a little slice of the action for yourself, and create a sense of loyalty with them, so that they'd never want to leave you. And if they did want to leave you, it was only because it was probably for the better good in both directions. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's certainly how I started this company. I've always believed in people first, and when you lead with people and you understand what their goals are, what their objectives are, both monetarily and from soft skill, business development, career development perspective, and you pay attention to those things and you foster growth in both of those categories, then you get a pretty good result. I started, 10, 11 years ago in internet marketing, and I started out as a direct mailer and realized that I wasn't getting the opportunity as a marketing intern I wanted. So I figured out how to make money online, because nobody would give me a budget otherwise, and marketing online was free, or very, very cheap, relatively speaking. Took those principles, went to a couple different companies, made a lot of money for a lot of different people, and really didn't like the direction that our company was heading, and so ultimately started this business. And it started out as a consulting business, quite frankly, and I just realized that no one really wanted to shift paradigms. No one really wanted to do the things forward that needed to be done to change the industry. And so, so I started moving away from consulting, and brought on a few people. One of my first hires, our director of marketing, Kate Budd, I'd worked with her at a few prior companies. She came on for a profit share, and she had worked for UGG boots. She had worked for 5 Point Capital. She had taken basically in the lead marketing position 4 companies from lower than 10 million to greater than 100 million in revenues in a short time, and led with her, and on a rev share or a profit share, her first check was $9, and needless to say, that has certainly grown across the board.
Can I stop you real quick and ask you, when a minute ago you said that there were other people didn't want to change, that there was a paradigm shift that needed to happen. Can you, because that's really obvious to you, but can you expand on that for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, basically what I call it is the yacht and private school culture. You have a bunch of people who have made a lot of money with conventional mechanisms, and conventional ways of doing business. Obviously, the internet is a very dynamic vehicle, one that a lot of conventional and traditional businesses aren't familiar with, and even people who work in technology don't quite understand, often how rapidly the internet moves. And so ultimately, I was trying to give companies, the blueprint for the future of our industry, and I think this would happen across multiple industries, not just mine.
And when you say companies, you're talking about household names, the brands and names that you see in magazines, on shelves at Target, and
billboards, radio, shelves at Target, absolutely. You know, and tried to give these guys the keys to the castle for the evolution of the industry. And you know, most people, they believe it, they hear it, they want to do it, but they just don't have the, you know, they don't have the fortitude to actually invest in the change. And so what ends up happening is, and that's why I think the internet creates so much opportunity, because these bigger companies get very static, and that leaves room for the true entrepreneurial spirit, which certainly is your audience, to come in and grab market share from 100-pound gorillas.
Right, right. And so that's what you're going to be talking about on the stage on next Thursday, August the 9th, in Austin, Texas, is how you, the kind of the structure and the strategy of what you did that is replicatable, because you've seen other people do it and you've taught other people to do it as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, not to aggrandize, but yeah, I think we've got a little bit of the Belichick coaching tree going on, you know, but they're seeing a little bit more successes than Belichick's ex-coaches, I would say. Yeah, it's definitely replicatable. You know, what I want to talk about next week is just, you know, the blueprint for this, and then also how to navigate the waters. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that, you know, with internet, people are very rah, you know, make $1 million very quickly and all of this stuff. And certainly that can happen as the internet, you know, evolves, and as it gets more mature, those things become more difficult and more difficult. And so you need to make sure that you have value, so that you can create your street corner on the internet, and you can have a legitimate business that people want to visit, that can be sustainable to not only help, you know, you and your current family, but you know, you for generations to come. And that's, you know, that's ultimately the goal, is to provide, you know, to provide for everyone around you.
And to kind of segue from there, because I know you and I have had a couple of private, like really kind of more in-depth conversations where you've helped me with some really cool things, and you've shared with me some things you probably wouldn't just say to anybody, but I'm gonna out you here. What's one of your goals for everyone on your team, unless that's something they don't know about and you just shared with me?
No. My goal for everyone on the team is for them to become, you know, financially independent. To me, that means they have the ability to, you know, outright purchase a home, and certainly not, you know, not worry about their retirement every day and those living expenses. Ultimately, what I want people on my team to be able to do is to pursue whatever their passion is after they leave our company.
So you're not trying to get them to just stick with Moss affiliate marketing forever?
I don't believe in that. I believe that the day that somebody is working for me and they stop learning is the day that they need to move on. So as long as somebody has an opportunity to grow and to learn and is still passionate about what they're doing, great. Otherwise, they need to move on, and no harm, no foul. That's part of life.
Yeah, and it's because I think it's really clear that yacht and private school lifestyle is one that's thrived for a long time, because before the internet, you had to hustle a lot longer to get to that point, and now it's not that impossible for people to get to that within 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, you certainly raise a good point. One of my favorite stories is when Warren Buffett talks about when he and Gates went to, you know, a remote village in China, and there were boat rowers, and they rowed the boat because they were born into a family of boat rowers, and that's all they could do. Didn't matter what idea they had. They could have had the most genius idea. They could have been the most gifted athlete. They could have been the most, talented musician. No one would ever know because they were, regulated to boat rowing.
Wow.
That's kind of what we have. That's kind of what our, corporate America used to be. You could have the best ideas. You could be a young, you could be a young gun. You could have, ideas like crazy. You could make the company, multi-million dollars. You could fast forward their growth, but no one would ever know because no one would listen to you. And then you also had entrepreneurs, certainly, right? But the traditional entrepreneur in America started a restaurant, started a hardware store, bought a franchise, some of those things, which can be some uphill sledding, right? In the internet, it's a little bit different. Day one of my company, basically I'd lined up a few contracts, but in month one we had 60,000 in revenue and 2,500 in overhead. So, that's the power of the internet. No pizza joint, no bar, no restaurant, no tax firm, no legal firm. You can't open up and have those kinds of results like you can online.
Right. And now that was when did you start?
I have a number of companies now, but that one started, the one I was referring to started in 2008.
And this is one of those things where if you were, which you're not, but if you were selling some sort of information product or something, you'd have to write results not typical on the bottom, right?
Right.
And the reason I say that is because I kind of want to make sure that folks that are watching right now are able to be inspired by what you're saying to the point that they, have some sort of reality. So bringing that home, what can people expect that you're going to share with them, give them at the party? Because I know you said it's not going to be a rah-rah, feel good, yay, you're going to make $1 million kind of thing. Not that you can't, but you're not going to come and try and make people believe that's what's going to happen. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, certainly. First of all, to your point, results not typical or whatever, asterisk. It was kind of funny. We got audited in year 2 just because it was such an unfamiliar, business model. Right. And we obviously passed the audit with flying colors, but it was just interesting because they weren't used to a business model that had 1 million W-2s coming in and out. So raise some red flags. In terms of coming and speaking, I will never dampen an entrepreneur spirit. There are 1 million opportunities, and when we think that everything's invented, I'm sure the pioneers thought that everything that was possibly invented was invented. I'm sure the kings who lived in castles, back in the medieval, were content with their no air conditioning, with somebody fanning them with a big, peacock feather or whatever it was. So there's always room for ingenuity and development and something new. But what I don't want people to go into it with, because you are taking some risks with your family, with your retirement fund a lot of times. A lot of people don't understand, the tax laws and implications when they're starting a business, those types of things. I'm just trying to say, okay, people say I'm very risky. I would say I'm very risk adverse. I'm very confident in what I'm doing is going to make money. And so when people, I would encourage people, part of it is risk, but be knowledgeable about what you're doing and what you're getting into, because it's going to be a bumpy road. Sometimes you have to fire your friends. Sometimes you have to do the things that don't make you feel good, and sometimes you're going to have to suck it up, and you're going to have to, pull from within more so than you've ever had to do before. It's not a 9-to-5 gig. It's a lifetime. It's a lifestyle change, and
right.
You got to be ready for that.
So would it be safe to say one of the things you're going to do in your talk is kind of give people a model for a litmus test for knowing when it's a safe risk versus a good risk versus a bad risk? Is that the distinction?
I'll certainly go into that. One of the things that 2008 brought is difficulty to raise capital. Back in the dot-com boom, and even people pulled back their dollars in the early 2000s, and then the pocket started opening back up. You know, people are dollars aren't as easy to come by, investment dollars. So people sometimes have to take their personal risk. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that capital is difficult to come by, and so certainly now it's starting to come back around. But now more than ever, you know, people are, you know, looking to their own pockets to fund their venture. So you have to get creative. You have to figure out what is your core competency and what are you going to be great at. And you need to understand that. You need to surround yourself with people who can shore your weaknesses that are necessary in order to achieve your goal. You need to align your partners who are fulfilling things, who are fulfilling, you know, components of your business for you. You need to align their goals and your goals so that their compensation is aligned with your success, not fixed and flat payouts. Because otherwise, you know, you already have a fixed overhead before you're even making money. And that's not, you know, and you want as little of that as humanly possible. Right. So those are the types of things that I've been very creative with that has, you know, led to a cost infrastructure that scales with the business.
Wow. And you'll share some of that?
Absolutely. For you, David, anything.
Awesome. Anything specific you can touch on today that somebody can put into place? Like, I mean, put into play that they can like start taking action on in their business today, no matter what kind of business they're in, no matter what level they're in. I know that's kind of a tall order because, you know, if you're everything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody. But there's probably a few principles that you see a lot of people not taking action on.
You know, where people screw up the most, in my opinion, is people don't critically think. People take the status quo at face value a lot of times. And it's very odd for me to watch an entrepreneur do that. Because typically their idea is not status quo, right? Typically an entrepreneur's idea or what they're trying to do is find a niche or find you know, a place in the market, and it's you know, there's a new value or a, you know, or a new component that the world hasn't seen yet. But then when you go to things like lining up vendors, you know, vendor compensation, how you run your books, how you run, when you do all of these things, everyone tends to take the status quo and get very shy with everything else. And I would say you need to critically think about creative ways to make your business work, not just on your product, but outside of your product.
Can you give us one example? Because that's fascinating. I figured for sure you'd go, damn, that's hard. But you just like rattled that off like I would ask you to play a game of tic-tac-toe or something.
Well, I've been around a few blocks, and I've certainly had some failures. And I find that when I have the failures, it's when I'm not thinking creatively about how to get things done. I think the thing that you know, that I find for us is a lot of people start a business one of two ways. They you know, they either have, you know, one programmer in America because that's all they can afford, or, you know, they'll have, you know, hire somebody over in India or South America or something of that nature. One of the things that we did is we got our first hire in the programming department was a project manager, and then we filled him in, and a brilliant project manager, the best I'd ever worked with, and then we filled him in with cheaper overseas programming resources. But we had him understand and work with the business for 6 months before we ever hired one programmer, so that he knew how to dictate and how to get, you know, our goals and our mission across overseas, despite the timing and the language barriers.
That's a brilliant example, and one that you're not just theorizing on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got a million of those. You got to be creative. There's too many people out there with more money than you. So as an entrepreneur, you gotta be creative. You gotta be nimble. You gotta take those shortcuts that that other people are not taking, and within ethical boundaries, always. In my opinion,
totally.
Not everybody does that, but that's my personal opinion. I don't think you need to cheat to make money, but I like more of a challenge. My money's not going to come the easy way.
Would it be something that you? How long would it take you to come up with a list of like maybe 5 or 6 of these creative, nimble? You know, the image that I'm getting is that most entrepreneurs think creatively for their big idea,
right?
And then everything under that they do standard status quo, like the rest of the world,
right?
And so these things down here, how long would it take you to come up with maybe 5, 10 things like that we could do it either in a follow-up or that we could give only to the people that show up at the party? I'm trying to create something that you know, we can give folks as a carrot to dangle out there.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I could probably create it off the top of my head, first of all. But I'll say this. You told me that, you know, you want to have a party on Thursday the 9th.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a party, and I'll give all those participants of the party some valuable information. But they're going to have to wait until Thursday in order to get that checklist.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I like the energy of the group. I like what you guys are doing. And I don't waste my time. And I'm certainly not here to waste anybody else's time. So you'll get some value, and hopefully I'll get some value from you.
Yeah. People might not realize this, but you've been to at 1 or 2 of the parties as a participant, and
yeah.
I think you were kind of doing your recon, figuring if this was something you wanted to do.
I was. But I like the energy, and I like the spirit of the people, and what we need to do. What people need to walk away from your events with is they need to channel all of that energy from the event into actionable items that ultimately will make them money and put them on the path.
Right.
They've got to, if they don't channel that energy into value, then the parties are worthless. You know what a lot of people do? A lot of people are self-aggrandizing, or they think they're on an island. Meaning that they think that they have to come up with a solution, or they've got to find the next grip or the next foothold. And that's just not the case. Oftentimes when I'm stuck or when I'm in that position, you need to bounce it off of somebody else.
Okay.
And you've got to think about, and that could be a book, that could be, you know, talking to a mentor or somebody else that you respect. Quite frankly, a lot of my ideas have come from talking to somebody who has no clue about the business and doesn't even really know business at all, and just their pragmatic, just, you know, simplistic approach sometimes it makes the answer so simple. And sometimes I think that we, as, you know, entrepreneurs and as business people, we always look to overcomplicate things, and I don't get it, but I do it too. So, you know, I get frustrated with myself because of that. So my advice is, when you're stuck and when you're looking for that thing, you don't always have to be the hero. Rely on other people. Sometimes an outside perspective can put things back into perspective really, really quick.
Yeah, that's actually really valuable, because I've seen a pattern that a lot of folks that gravitate towards working online tend to be a little more introverted.
Yeah, sure, right? Because oftentimes that's their core competency or their skill set, right? Is the programming, or they've got such a great mind that can create such a great product in their head, but then they need the execution of it.
Right.
And David, quite frankly, I wouldn't call you introverted, but I would say that you fell into that camp where you had an extreme vision in your head, but getting the execution of that vision to what you wanted was not necessarily in your wheelhouse. So, sorry to call out your, you know, sorry to call that out, but
that's cool, man. That's one of the things I like about you, and is you're just, what you see is what you get. Some of my favorite people are like that.
And it's funny because on that note, I used to suppress it earlier in my career. I didn't do a very good job, but I used to suppress my candor. And then I read Jack Welch's book, Winning, and chapter 4 talks about candor and substantiative conflict. And from then on, I was like, nope, I'm just opening it up. Let it fly, see what happens. So you just can't hurt people's feelings.
Right.
Don't make it personal. Make it about the business.
Sure. All right, man. Well, good stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. See you guys. Go to internetmarketingparty.com. You'll see a big box at the top and upcoming parties. Little tab that where you can register and get yourself at the party or to the party.
Don't let David down.